Alright, so today I'm actually going to be showing you guys how to do a SQL database connection using Node.js. For whatever reason, developers that develop mainly in the JavaScript ecosystem seem to forget that it's not only just MongoDB or Firebase database. There's actually just plain old MySQL that's been tested and it's true. So we're actually going to figure that out now. First thing I'm going to do is just create a new folder in any directory you really like. I'm using Elementary OS Linux, by the way, just in case anybody wanted to know what I was using. And let's just call it SQL con. The name doesn't really matter, but for me it's just a folder name, right? So inside SQL con, we're going to just create a new empty file. And I think realistically all we need is this. But actually we'll call it app.js. And excuse me for having a really loud mechanical keyboard, but at the same time, no, it's just what it is. Now, let's get in here. We'll open this one in a code editor of your choice. I like to use Atom, but obviously, you can use whatever you like. As we wait for Atom to open up on my not primary screen, we are pretty much in here, right? So, as you see in every, sort of application, it's pretty much standard, right? It's an empty JavaScript application. But let's just put a comment in here for good measure. Let's just say SQL DB connection. Okay, so realistically, what I envision is that we'll have a database that just has a series of items, and when I mean a series of items, it'll just say item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. So now we're going to create an actual database. So we're going to open this up and we're going to go to a local instance of phpMyAdmin. So now we're going to call this database SQTest, and you guys can call it literally whatever you want. This is just what I'm calling it. So we're going to have not 4 columns, but just 2. And the table is going to be called items. And that looks good to me. Let's go. The first one will be an integer. Of course, it's going to auto increment, and yes, that'll just be the primary key, right? So let's do auto increment for this. Yes, hit go. It'll be called ID. And this will be called name, and the name will actually just be given varchar with a length of 255. I just like to do that for personal reasons. It doesn't really matter. And we'll save. And if we look in here under the browse tab, well, there's actually nothing in there, but let's insert something into our DB, right? Since this is auto incrementing, we'll just call it item 1. Go. And then we'll just insert 3 total, right? So item 2, go, insert item 3. Now we've got 3 items inserted in here. We come back to the browse tab, we can actually see clearly in our database that we have an ID, and each of these 3 items has a name. Now, when it comes to the database, that's pretty much it. We need to do nothing else, but I'll just move this tab over just in case we may need it in the future. And just to test that our application is running, I'm actually going to just do a console.log to say our app is alive. So really, when I come in here, I'm just going to open up a new terminal instance. And if you want to know what terminal I'm using, it's actually called Platformio IDE Terminal. It's available for Linux, Windows, and Mac. So we'll do node app.js. As you can see here, it says our app is alive. So that means that, yeah, our application is working. I'm going to drop my terminal. Now, in every MySQL project, so to speak, you need that connection file, right? How are we going to connect to this database? How are we going to actually make sure this works? And we're going to create a new file under our directory that we've created this project in. The new file is going to be called connection.js. new file called connection. Our comment will say this file will contain our connection. And once again, I do apologize for this very, very loud mechanical keyboard, but unapologetically so, I love this keyboard. Now, one thing you have to realize is that because this is Node.js, we have to start installing packages. And luckily for MySQL, all we need really is one package. So now we're gonna do const SQL equals require MySQL, right? SQL. All right, so now we've got that and we're gonna save it. But if you try to run this now, it's gonna give you a fat error. So just to make things easier on ourselves, as you can see on the left side of our directory, we don't actually have a package.json yet, right? So let's do npm init. Package name is SQLcon version 1, description, simple DB connection. Entry point is app.js, no test commands, no git repos. Author would be me, license, and we're gonna go and say everything is okay. And now we have a package.json. So right off the bat, I apologize. My neighbor has actually started a lawnmower of some sort. So if you hear any sort of background noise, that's exactly what that is. Now, if I can even continue this video, we'll install our MySQL package. So we're gonna do npm install MySQL. And we've now installed MySQL. So we can actually continue. So now we're gonna create a connection to the DB. Save that, and we're gonna have a constant and we're gonna call it con just for connection, but we pretty much understand what it's gonna be for. So it's gonna be const con equals SQL dot create connection. I'm gonna do that, and of course I spelled const wrong, but that's okay. So obviously in MySQL connections, you're gonna have 4 sort of parameters that it feeds into. You're going to have host, user, password, and you're gonna have also database. So the first thing we're actually gonna type down is host. The host is gonna have just empty parameters for now, and then the next thing we're gonna have is our user. We type down our user, followed by our password, and then finally followed by which database we actually want to connect to. For some reason I can't spell today. Perfect. Now once we have all of this down, we're going to come down here and say export the variable. So we're going to export this variable, and what you're really going to do here, since it's Node.js, we're just going to do module.exports equals just a quick object, and we're only going to export con. Now, in a nutshell, this is pretty much your database connection right here. And what we're going to do with this is that we're going to include it inside our app.js file to actually show us queries. So we're gonna put in our password here. Of course, I'm gonna block this out so you guys don't actually see my credentials, but you can see a couple of them, I guess. Localhost. And then the user is gonna be root. It may not be root depending on how you have your system set up. Our password is gonna be our password. And our database, if you guys can remember, we actually called it SQ test, if I'm not wrong. And we'll save this connection. And by my standards, this looks okay. Now we're actually going to come back into our app.js file, right? So now in our app.js, of course, we want to be able to use this, right? So we're actually going to come in here and include our connection file, right? All right. All right, so we're gonna call it this. Const connection equals require dot slash, actually no, we're just gonna do equals connection.js, and we're going to save this file. Now, running a query is honestly one of the simplest things you could possibly do, right? So we're just gonna do this. We're gonna have a very, very simple query here, and we're just gonna call this one. First of all, let's do our SQL statement. Var SQL equals, and then we'll write our SQL statement in here. Select all from items. Yeah, select all from items. That's pretty much what we need. Save that. That's our SQL. Now we'll execute the query. So we'll actually just say connection dot con. Remember the con variable that was in here that we exported, right? So connection.con.query, and we're going to insert our SQL statement. That lawnmower is getting really loud in the back, but we'll continue. An anonymous function here, and you guys can see what I'm doing. If you don't understand what this is, I'll type it down very quickly and then explain what it's doing. This may look a little bit wacky to you guys. Now, what I've just done here is honestly the same thing as going back and saying function. They both do the same thing. It's just for me, I like the lazier syntax of it all, so that's the reason why I'm doing it this way. But feel free to, choose whichever anonymous function style you want. Inside the parameters, it's obviously going to be the same thing. So we'll have error, then our result, and then our fields. Should we, actually search for fields. Right off the bat, we're going to throw an error if something is wrong, right? Yeah, I'm definitely going to mute some of this out. And what I'm going to do right now is just give it a little test just to see if everything's working properly. This is not, a final thing. It may or may not work, but let's check it out. So run node app.js. Let's see what's wrong here. We can't find the module connection.js, and that's actually my mistake. I should have done a dot slash. As you can see, we're actually getting information back from, the database. As you can see here, we have raw data packets that say ID, names are item 1, item 2, and item 3. Now let's actually do result 0 and see what we get, just to try out different combinations. So in a nutshell, there we go. You are now getting information back from the database using MySQL on Node.js. Thanks for watching.